Oh, and since everybody's wishing death upon everybody else and holding everybody else accountable except for the Democratic Party, when the exit polling of disabled voters inevitably comes back and says that a majority of disabled people voted conservative again, which is something that disabled people knew from past elections, I want to remind you of a couple things, okay? One is that disabled people have been talking about voter inaccessibility for decades. It's still not equitable for disabled people to vote, and many disabled people cannot vote, okay? And two, a lot of the disabled people that were your allies are dead. They're dead. When disabled people were saying wear masks, take COVID seriously, when I said back in 2020 that the pandemic would shape elections for years to come, this is part of what I mean. Like, you want a normal back, you got normal back. Oh, and you want to know who has the highest rate of disability as it pertains to COVID? Latinos. Are we piecing things together yet or no? Don't you think a mask would be better than a fucking bracelet?
That climate clock isn't real. It's art. It's literally an activism art piece aimed to get y'all to take more action on climate. It's not counting down until the end of the world. It's not counting down until things are too late. It's literally counting down until the middle of 2029 because scientists agree the more action we take by 2030, the better things will be in the long run. And I seriously cannot believe I am having to make a third video calling out this climate clock because for some reason y'all would rather believe a random art piece in New York and the climate doom videos about it instead of the thousands of scientists and millions of activists trying to convince y'all not to give up. I am not upset that y'all are freaking out over climate change. I am upset that y'all are looking for any excuse to give up. So if you fell victim to the climate clock, I hope you go endorse the Fossil Fuel Non-Proliferation Treaty at the link in my bio. This is an international treaty aimed at quickly and equitably phasing out fossil fuels that has been endorsed by thousands of scientists, including myself. And before y'all scream that there's no way it'll ever get implemented, countries and subnational governments all over the world, including right here in the United States, have endorsed it. And the more governments we get to endorse it, the more likely we will have international negotiations on it. And again, you can make that possible by endorsing it as an individual and also encouraging your local government to do the same because guess what? There's a toolkit for that too. For the love of all things holy, please stop believing a clock over scientists. I can't believe I'm having to say that for a third time.
I just have one more thing to say to the white people who voted for Kamala Harris. Like most black women after this election, I am emotionally exhausted, and you will not be getting any more emotional labor out of me for the foreseeable future. Take this last thing I'm about to say to you and hold on to it tight. Those friends that you're cutting off right now because you found out that they voted for Trump, there were signs before this election cycle that showed you who they were. Signs that showed you they were racist, they were a bigot, they were homophobic, they were misogynistic. There were signs that they were all those things and you ignored them because white people don't hold other white people accountable. There were signs that your friend, your boyfriend, your side piece, your husband, whatever, was a Republican or was going to vote for Trump way before the election cycle. People will show you who they are. They will show you what they believe. They show you with what they read, what movies they watch, their favorite TV shows, what music they listen to, the people that they hold community with, the influencers that they follow. You can tell who somebody is based on what they let others around them get away with. And this is why so many black women don't feel safe around white women, because you let people around you get away with treating us like shit. Let the people around you get away with treating everyone who's not you awfully. That you're not racist, but you'll be friends with someone who's racist. You'll say you're not a misogynist, but your boyfriend's best friend is a misogynist, which means your boyfriend's a misogynist because your boyfriend's holding community with someone who's a misogynist. You say you're not transphobic, but you'll buy a book from an author who is transphobic. We see it once a quarter when an influencer comes out here with some racist tweets from their past or they say something out of pocket. You cancel them for a week. They come and apologize. You accept the apology that's not yours to accept. And then they continue operating at the same level of success as they did before. Probably still following Alex Earl. You're probably still following Tana Mojo, Brooke Schofield. Y'all not being able to hold each other accountable and actually talk to each other and actually have conversations with each other when you do something wrong or when you affect other people trickles down. Those little girls a while ago who went into Sephora and put that makeup on their face that they knew was not their color, basically doing blackface, and their mom came in there and didn't look surprised, didn't look shocked at all? Yeah, because no one held their mama accountable. Then their mama doesn't hold them accountable, and it trickles down. You think they're gonna hold their kids accountable? You voting for Kamala Harris and you cutting off those people isn't enough. You need to be able to practice having hard conversations with people, and you need to really, really sit and think about the signs that you missed from the friends that you had to cut off this time around for voting for Trump. Think about the signs that you missed and make sure that you do not let those signs pass again with any other friends that you bring into your circle. You can come into Black women's comments all day today and be like, I tried, I voted, I tried, we really tried. But just because you tried on election day and you're not trying every single other day of your life, don't say anything in our comments. Don't send love, don't send hugs, don't send well wishes, don't say you're sorry, don't say you're praying for us, because you don't actually care. You don't actually care. This time it matters more to you because it's directly affecting you. Hold each other accountable.
Hi, it's so nice to meet you. My name's Meredith. I'm an entomologist and artist. Hi, Meredith. It's nice to meet you, too. You're an entomologist. What does that mean? Oh, it means I study insects. Huh, neat. So, an artist. What kind of mediums? Thanks so much for all. I paint, I draw, I'm a knitter, I design knit patterns, and I write. Wow, a lot. So, what kind of stuff do you paint? Insects. Most part, yeah, I draw, paint, scientific illustration. Okay, so what kind of stuff do you write? Insects. And other technology, but mostly in. Okay, theme, but you knit. So, what do you knit? Design patterns. Design knitting patterns. Actually, every cake has on it. Okay, there's I love bugs.
Foods I avoid as an autistic vegan. I avoid laundry because I'm not a pedophile and I film dead people.
Because white women severely let down Black women this election cycle, and because Black women have to be 10 times better and more perfect than just your average white person, I put together a gift guide of all Black-owned women businesses that deserve a lot more credit because money talks. My name is Ella, and my love language is gift giving, and I think this gift guide would be perfect for one of your girlfriends in your life, or like your mom, or really anyone. These will all be linked in my Shop My, which is in my bio. Let's start with some of the skincare, makeup, beauty brands that are on here. Anything Pat McGrath's is so freaking good. I love this topical ointment stuff too. The lip balm is perfect if you have sensitive skin. This Ami Cole brow gel is so nice. I got gifted one at an event and it's seriously my favorite brow gel. I always put Estelle glassware on my gift guides. I think it's such a fun gift. I personally own a lot of them and they're just so cute. They make your tablescape like way cuter. These Elisa Johnson sunglasses have such a chokehold on me. I think they are so cute and would be the perfect gift. And if you are headed to a Friendsgiving or a Christmas party, I highly recommend bringing the Black Girl Magic champagne. I love it. The McBride sisters are so cool and doing really cool things in wine, so definitely check them out. As always, these are linked on my Shop My. I hope you take some extra time this holiday season to shop small and try and support the groups of people that you like to support. Okay, love you, bye.
A lot of you asked where you can try our Inuit food and where you can experience our culture. Ungava Polar Eco Tours is actually the first Inuit-owned tourism that is now open to everyone. The location is on an island in Nunavut, Canada. It was really refreshing because I got to see so many wild animals up close. I love that we were in the middle of nowhere. We're only surrounded by nature, and the ground that we were walking on, called tundra, was so squishy. And of course, we were given the opportunity to eat country food that was locally harvested by Inuit. People got to try raw beluga for the first time. It really was a unique experience at the Ungava Polar Eco Tours because you really get to see the true beauty of the North.
No, you aren't supporting, investing, or organizing your community to uplift the most marginalized if you're still not masking. Our liberation has always been connected. The continued rise of fascism is directly connected to Palestine, Sudan, Congo, losing reproductive rights, anti-trans violence, xenophobia, and yes, COVID. Being okay with disabled and immunocompromised folks dying for your convenience is not very progressive of you, especially when we know repeat infections can cause lifelong damage for all of us. If you are unable to handle the inconvenience of wearing a mask to protect your community, how much are you really willing to personally invest in the liberation of marginalized people? That being said, It's never too late to start masking again and taking more precautions, but it is too late for the millions of folks who died because of our government's complete mishandling of a global pandemic that continues to still take lives every day. Bye, friends.
Why do pandemics lead to fascism? Well, here's a thread explaining. The thread is by Julia Doubleday, who runs the Gauntlet News. Right now we're in it, but if you were to look back at this era with the benefit of a century, it would be clear that the pandemic, just like in 1918, accelerated fascism as it brought eugenicist ideas into the mainstream. In a few short years, we went from let's protect the vulnerable to large swaths of those same people being spitting mad at the very idea of being asked to think of strangers as their responsibility and categorizing vulnerable people as disposable other whose deaths are irrelevant. People do not take the time to unpack what that means psychologically. What does it mean when you go from being socially encouraged to think of your neighbor as a person you should protect, to being encouraged to think of them as someone who could be hurt by the virus as a burden? Do you not see how this logic does not stop with just COVID, the pandemic, and masking? How the underlying argument here is that there is no collective responsibility, there is no society, as Thatcher would say? This is a far-right idea. People on the left are practicing it. The right had their pitch from day one: the weak will die and that's their business. But it was the liberals who came in and, when the vaccines failed to produce herd immunity, decided to reopen anyway, abandon safety measures, and fully adopt that far-right framing. Dems rode to power on a wave of anger over the pandemic in 2020, literally. Coming out of the polls, voters listed the pandemic as their top concern. So how to get the public so upset about 400,000 deaths to stop caring as the deaths continued? Instead of ending the pandemic as he claimed, Biden oversaw 800,000 plus pandemic deaths and counting, endless waves of mass infection, and disabled millions. They sold this failure by adopting the fascist framing that it's not your problem, just those who get hurt. Of the deadly winter 2023 to 2024 wave last year, Dr. Fauci famously said, "You'll find the vulnerable will fall by the wayside." Americans were encouraged to think of themselves as part of the superior group of people who wouldn't be harmed while accepting the deaths of the weak. This strengthens fascism for obvious reasons. It discourages solidarity. It encourages people to think of vulnerable groups as not only not deserving of protection, but as targets for derision and harm. Biden instructed Americans to go back to normal. This is what that looks like. I've tagged Julia in this video, and definitely go check out the Gauntlet News. And here's an example of how that plays out in even left progressive spaces. Now you can pause to read, and this was shared on COVID Twitter, so it's already been seen by thousands of people. And you can see the shift in 2020. COVID was seen as a public health issue that we all had to be in together to protect each other. And now wearing a mask in COVID is framed as an individual issue, a topic deemed not important because this individual person doesn't feel in danger themselves. Another related very quick thread from Cassie Pritchard at HitQBN_devil. I really think if Harris loses, it won't just be about a bad campaign and a bad candidate. Looking at the polling on immigration, homelessness, and crime, among other issues, the country has lurched right pretty hard in just the last few years, I think because of COVID. People experienced a collective crisis which demanded concerted action and sacrifice in order to protect the whole public, but especially the most vulnerable, and they hated it. They got exhausted with it very quickly. They wanted to go back to normal ASAP. This exhaustion seems like a big part of the rightward shift of the median voter, where before they might have felt compelled to care, or at least pretend to care, about, say, homeless people, now there's a misanthropic apathy. Just lock them up or kill them. It's a kind of moral exhaustion, an unwillingness to put in the energy it takes to care about others. It sounds so much easier to just deport them, jail them, or kill them. Just make the problems go away by getting rid of anyone with a problem.
64% of indigenous people in America voted for Donald Trump.
64% of indigenous folks who could get to the polls voted for Donald Trump. And that's because politicians punished indigenous folks for swinging Arizona in 2020. Hi, my name is Evan. I'm a bioethicist, and I specialize in misinformation, disinformation, and conspiracy theories as a threat to public health. I've been on this app doom scrolling like the rest of you, and I understand everybody's upset. As someone who literally every aspect of my life is now in jeopardy in the next 6 months to a year, and I actually don't say that to be dramatic, I actually mean it. My marriage, my part of my family's citizenship, my safety, my health access, my job, all of it is actually imperiled pretty severely. I understand why you're upset. I also understand the impetus of looking at the exit polls and deciding who's easiest to punch down at or towards, because we're upset. But Indigenous folks didn't do that. And let me explain. So in 2020, Arizona swung for the Democrats, for Joseph Biden, by about 10,000 votes. And that is because of the turnout that happened, which was a record high in the past decade for Indigenous populations. There's 22 recognized tribes in Arizona. That's recognized. That doesn't mean that that's all of them. And one of the more substantial tribes is the Tohono O'odham. I think I'm saying that right, but correct me in the comments if I'm wrong. Population. There's Havasupai, there's Hopi, there's a bunch of other populations as well, but this is one of the more substantial ones. They mainly are found in and around the Sonoran Desert area. They have a farm, they have all sorts of crafts, they have all sorts of businesses. They're a substantial population. So there's two major numbers for how many Indigenous folks nationally have the capacity to register to vote. That is, they're over the age of 18. The Biden administration did a census recently, I think in 2022, and came up with 8 million. But the Native American Rights Fund said somewhere around 4 million. Their census was, I think, a couple of years before the Biden administration. So just so you know, those are the two numbers I've seen. Those are the two numbers you'll probably see. Now in 2012, Indigenous folks had a turnout in a national election. So this is including both presidential and midterms. In 2012, the turnout was 42%. From 2012, there was a steady downward cycling of about 11% off and on, ping-ponging back and forth, up until 2020. So prior to 2020, in both midterms and presidential elections, it was a downward slope in terms of turnout from 42%, the high at 2012, going down to things like 31%, all the way down to 25% at one point, until 2020. In 2020, there was a 48% turnout. And that's a huge bounce back from the previous election cycle in 2018, which was somewhere around like 38, I believe. Double digits jump to 48% turnout. This had a substantial impact on the 2020 elections in multiple states, but there was no state that it was more apparent and had a huge effect in terms of swinging the whole state than Arizona. But immediately after the 2020 election, Arizona Republicans specifically implemented a rule that you had to show proof of address in order to, on your ID, in order to be able to register or be able to vote. And where this becomes a trick is the fact that most reservations and people who live on reservations do not have a house number. They do not have a specific address that you can deliver things to. And so because of this, a lot of people who live on reservations, specifically Indigenous folks, utilize things like P.O. boxes. Now, the Tohono O'odham community could see this for exactly for what it was, and they did end up leveling a lawsuit against this law. And what a judge ultimately decided was, as long as they could describe where they lived relatively on the reservation, as well as show a photo ID, and give other proof of them being who they are and where they lived, that they could vote. But this doesn't mean that that was executed handily across voting locations. It also didn't mean that everybody got the news. And because of this, a lot of people were turned away or had to fill out what was called a provisional ballot. And in the provisional ballot situations, their ballot may or may not be counted at the discretion of someone being able to say this person did or did not show up, or this was enough proof to count their vote. Even with the clarification from the judge relating to this law and people who lived on reservations, this had a huge chilling effect on the turnout for 2022. On top of the fact that one of the biggest issues related to living on reservation space is access, that is literally transportation getting to and from the polls. There are buses sometimes that run once a day, maybe at best, but most people have to obtain some form of transportation by grouping together or by traveling long distances to pick one another up. There's just no polling place within range of where people are, particularly people who do not have a form of transportation of their own. These are things that are not in walking distance. There might be one polling place that is open for some distance, that is possibly tens or hundreds of miles. Alongside this were issues relating to the fact that information is very hard to get in and out of reservation spaces, particularly to elders, around candidates, around polling or voting times, dates, locations, and also that these things change on purpose to confuse these communities. And in confusing those communities, they either are dissuaded from voting, or when they do put in the effort to go vote, they're unable to for a myriad of reasons. Either the voting place closed earlier than they thought it would, it opened later, it changed locations, some of the machines are down. All of these are issues that this population encountered, and this is just describing Arizona. Because of these changes to proof of identity and these intentionally neglectful acts when it came to polling locations and transportation and access, the turnout between 2020 and 2022 plummeted from 48% to 31%. And it plummeted even further in this current election cycle. So if you can imagine, for an incredibly disenfranchised group, the people who were able to, first of all, physically get to their polling location that was in fact open, and they were not questioned, or they were able to show enough proof of identity to vote, you can imagine what kind of privileges they might be living with that might cause them to vote in different decisive ways. On top of the fact that it's not hard to split a vote pretty deeply when you have a low turnout. If 40,000 people show up and 4 of them vote in opposition, that doesn't even register. But if 8 people show up and those same 4 people are able to show up and vote, that's 50%. And so the trick you're seeing in exit polls isn't just a representation of like some sort of split or divide politically. It's actually showing how low those numbers are. Turnout is so low that it's able to cause a pretty divisive looking split amongst the electorate that was able to exercise their right to vote. I understand being so upset that you have to find a boogeyman, and I also understand that because we live in the US and we love Puritanism, we want to find someone to become carceral towards. We want to punish someone for harming us or what feels like harm. I understand the sentiment. But in a lot of these situations, we end up kind of swinging wildly and hitting at people that are so disenfranchised that the numbers can be manipulated in a way that looks like they're fragmenting from solidarity. This is where I'm going to mention Gene as one of the creators that I so deeply appreciate on this app, because he works so hard to get people to understand what our radical politic actually means in practice and praxis. And it means that we have to understand what disenfranchised looks like, and sometimes it looks like something that is being weaponized against us, or that people are fragmenting away from us or mistreating us. Oppression looks like telling people that don't have a house number or a street name because they live on a reservation, that they have to show proof of address to make sure that they get discouraged and don't come back to vote, especially because they had to organize with 3 neighbors in order to even get physically to the location. And that means the most privileged of them are able to exercise that right. And under a capitalist system, the most privileged are going to vote in favor of capitalism at minimum, and in favor of the privilege that they so deeply benefit from. Wanting to dismantle any sort of oppression requires that we look at instances like this and ask ourselves who benefits from us fighting with this group? Who might have been hurt to create these numbers, or how could these have been falsified? And I'm not saying that's what happened in every situation, but if you already know the conditions of an indigenous population, then you should know that there's something else also affecting these things. And it's probably their oppression.